Hi everyone, my name is Simon Mishevich and with me I have...
Louise Mishevich.
Hello.
Hello.
So we are going to focus on people, international tax planning, moving to the UK. We're also going to focus on people that have moved to the UK and currently living here in the UK for a number of years, and those that are thinking about planning on leaving, which I would suggest might be better to leave sooner rather than later. Why might that be?
Well, before we do that as well, the one other group I think we need to mention, this is probably a really relevant video for, is those who are investing or looking to invest in the UK as well. So you might not be here in the UK, but you're looking to invest here. There have been some really, really interesting, and I use that word very reservedly, interesting insights from today's UK autumn budget from the Labour government 2024.
And of course, we will be doing a lot more analysis. So this is pretty much a reaction video to what this budget announcement was all about. So let's kick off right now. So previously, if we look back, if you were moving to the UK, you would not be considered domiciled. And domiciled until you've been in the UK for 15 out of 20 tax years. Once you are in the UK for 15 out of 20 tax years, then your worldwide assets would be subject to inheritance tax. So that's the first
Not inheritance thing. Well, yes, inheritance tax.
Inheritance tax, right? So, and we also had this whole thing about you could use the remittance basis, which if you are living in the UK, you wouldn't necessarily be subject to UK tax on your worldwide income. But there's been a number of changes before the budget that said, well, we're going to scrap the 15 out of 20 years. And we're going to move towards the 10 years. Let's just focus on that bit, because listening to Rachel today, I didn't get that impression that 10 years was solid.
No, there was really so little said above we're going to make changes, domicile will be a concept no longer part of the tax calculation methodology. It was so high level. There were no specifics given other than a few things we're going to talk about in a few minutes. But that 10-year process, not even discussed.
Yeah, and that's worrying. So inheritance tax, one of the things I would be saying to people is we need to do a lot more tax planning with you to understand how long have you been in the United Kingdom, and then those assets that are abroad, do you start to give those off to your children sooner rather than later so they don't fall into your UK inheritance tax bill? Or more importantly, do you decide actually it's time to leave and go to a place that treats you better, as nomad capitalists might say, and find a country that doesn't charge you inheritance tax at all, and move your money, move your assets out of the UK. But why don't we go into a bit more detail?
Okay, so these are very much the rough and ready outcomes from Rachel's conversation today with The Nation. She is basically removing domicile from the tax system from April 2025. So things are afoot and they're going to happen relatively quickly. There is going to be a new residence-based scheme to calculate what tax is due and on what assets and where those assets are. And her key comment in that was that she is closing loopholes. Now, what she means by that is to be understood, but I don't think it's necessarily good news. She is going to extend the temporary repatriation relief to 3 years and extend its scope. Again, no real details around what that really means. So there was going to be a phased in approach from the Conservative government budget that indicated that they would move slowly and carefully away from a domicile tax calculation system to a residence, and they were going to give a number of reliefs, and that was going to be implemented over a number of years. So it sounds like the number of years has extended compared to the Conservatives, but actually its scope sounds like it's increased, and that doesn't sound like a good thing for you and I. It sounds perhaps more like a good thing for the UK government. And what they're expecting to do from having done all of this work is increase their coffers by £12.7 billion over the next 5 years. So it's clearly going to have a massive impact on people who are impacted by this new methodology of tax calculation.
I mean, one thing that is clear from the conversation was the remittance basis was scrapped, and the viewpoint was before this budget announcement that you could come into the UK for 4 years was the foreign income gains reservation part, where you wouldn't be taxed on your first 4 years on your worldwide income. Only your UK sourced income would be taxable in the UK. But I didn't get that from her today, that 4 years was going to be there. She talked about 3 years, and it felt as though, well, how does that impact this 4 year? So right now, I think it's going to be, in the next couple of days, weeks, there's going to be a lot of questions being fired at the Labour Party to say, well, what do you mean by that? Because I wasn't comfortable concluding, and I wasn't even going to do this video, but I think we need to say something because there was nothing concrete.
Well, let's add to that amount of non-concreteness, if that's even a word we can use, because of course whatever comes into place is not just going to impact the inheritance tax point that Simon talked about to begin with. It's going to start impacting you much faster than that, because it's going to have an impact on your income tax here. And they've just confirmed that they are continuing to support the Conservative implemented freezing on personal allowances. Now, how that would impact against a domicile versus tax regime they're looking to put in, yet to clarify. But actually, if they start exposing your foreign income to tax sooner, that's of course going to be under income tax and capital gains tax. We'll come on to capital gains tax in a second. So it looks like you're going to feel the pain much, much faster than you would have in the old system. No surprise there. Shall we talk about capital gains tax?
Please do.
Okay, so capital gains tax, again, a short-term tax when you sell assets, has just been levelled up, I think is the phrase I'm going to use for now. What I mean by that is that there were two different and distinct rates of capital gains tax when you sold assets such as shares and stocks, and buildings, whether that might be residential or commercial. Residential buildings was the most expensive capital gains tax, and all the others were banded together and were at a lower capital gains tax rate. That changes, and we think from April 2025, although again Rachel did not clarify this, but everybody's going to be at the current residential capital gains tax rates of basically 18% for the basic rate of tax and 24% for the high rate. Now, we were expecting it to be worse than that. We weren't sure how they were going to categorize different groups of assets. It looks like they've stuck with the highest rate that's already out there and bundled everybody into it. So again, not only are you likely to be exposed on income tax across your worldwide asset base a lot sooner than historically, capital gains tax is also going to be an impact to you.
Yeah. One of the things that they talked about was increasing stamp duty land tax for foreign investors in UK residential property, but they didn't do that. But there is a change to the additional rate. And what was that change?
Okay, so if you are securing a property, a residential property, and it's going to be a second home to you, you already have a home, wherever that is in the world, and you're going to be adding a second one, either for you or potentially to rent out, then there is a variety of SDLT rates, and that particular additional SDLT rate is now moving from 3% to 5%. But here is, and I'm going to use the phrase I've used before, here is the kicker. That kicks in from midnight tonight, the 30th of October 2024. So if you are not in a position to complete today, I'm afraid you need to add 2 percentage points to the amount of your asset purchase just to cover this new tax. Couple that to the non-UK based SDLT, you're going to feel quite some pain.
So what we conclude from this is get some tax planning pretty quickly, but don't rush too quickly. And the reason for that is because we know that more news will be coming out in the next days and weeks. So international tax planning is still going to be important, but as we learn more information, we can relay that back onto you. So it's important just to be a little bit more patient, wait for the details to start coming out, and then we can do some proper tax planning for you to stay in the UK or when you should leave. Done? I think we got one more.